Hey there, nurse. How are you? So let's all wish Florence Nightingale a happy birthday and finish up our Nurses Week together. Now, I know that I promised I would do 5 videos, but I have to tell you, last night I watched it was actually a Zoom. I listened to a Zoom that I thought was going to be inspiring and enlightening. And as it turned out, it was saddening and maddening. And I wasn't quite sure how I felt about it. So it took me today to sort of sort out my feelings. It was a presentation that was supposed to be about helping the endangered nurse and all of this sort of stuff. And by the time I was finished watching it, I was frustrated and angry, and they were talking about, and now I'm all about binding together. I'm all about us having a unified front and all of that. But there was so much negativity in it and so much ick that I couldn't really process it. So here's my answer for today. Yes, we should stick together. Yes, as a profession, we should do everything we can for each other. But I want to talk to you, that individual nurse who's sitting at the bedside thinking, I'm out here all by myself. And in some ways you are, but in other ways you're supported. We need to make sure we're supported by our teams. But the topics I've been talking about all week, the meanness matrix for bullying, the drama triangle, I'm going to touch on the stress cycle, and I'm going to talk about outward mindset. Those are things that you can do right now for yourself without anybody's help. These are things to help you. Now, again, organizations need to do things. We all need to do things, but I want to help you, the nurse who walks out of work and says, God damn it, what a shit show. Now, again, remember I was an ER nurse. And how many of you have said, this is a royal cluster, fill in the blank. What is it that you can do to protect yourself? Our first strategy was to deal with the meanness people, build your hex, figure out who they are, how much energy to give to them. Then our second strategy was the drama triangle. And when you find yourself being in the victim role, the persecutor's role, change it. Don't plug yourself into the victim role. You're not going to get very far when you're playing the victim. And there's enough going on in our world of nursing that nobody needs to be the victim. So the stress cycle, God dang it, we know that there's a lot of stress. This last year, come on now, everybody's got stress. We had stress before COVID. And what are you doing about it? I'm going to tell you another secret. There's always going to be stress in nursing and in healthcare, and you have some control over it. Yes, physicians and patients and families and lab and housekeeping and x-ray and the supervisors and your boss and your kids calling you. I'll tell you a story. I was circulating a case years ago, and my 9-year-old called me while I was trying to count instruments to help her with her math problem. Kids these days. And I bet some of you got to go to games, you got to go to work, you got to do this. The stress is going to continue. But you can break the stress. After the stress is over, are you still hyped up? Is your cortisol level high? Are you yelling and angry and swearing at everybody? There are some steps that you can take. First of all, recognize that the stress is past. You're home, you're sitting, you're watching TV. Now, if you went from one stress to another stress, that is a totally different story. And we'll talk about that next time we get together. But breaking the stress cycle, the stressor is done. You're home. You're in your own environment. You're got your feet up. You're watching The Big Bang Theory. You're doing what you need to do. But if you're still replaying it in your head, if you're still doing all of that, that stress is still there. Make yourself a habit. When I come through my door, work is work. Now, unless you're like me and you left back in the day when we had keys and I brought the keys home in my pocket, that's a whole nother story. But break the stress cycle. And the fourth strategy is try to see people as people with hopes, dreams, challenges, aspirations, and hopefully they can see you as a person with hopes, dreams, challenges, aspirations, all of those things. We all have it. But if you see that person as an object or a vehicle, or they just don't matter, people that are, again, going back to the meanness matrix, seeing people as people who are fallible. I do want to take a moment and say, please, please, please wrap your arms around those new grads. They are going to have a hell of a time getting into this profession. Their clinicals were canceled. They had Zoom classes. They didn't get to touch people the way we all did. So wrap your arms around them. Even if they say something dumb, answer them politely, answer them kindly. Don't just give them that, well, I made it through my preceptorship, you better do too. Don't do that. Please, pinky swear, don't do that. So as nurses, we got a lot on our plate, and I'm going to continue having these mini sessions, and I'm offering a coaching package starting in about mid-August. So stay tuned. If you want to find out more things that are going on, go to www.nursebullying. The sun came out. I'm sitting by my sliding glass door, and now the sun came out. www.nursebullying.com. Download the freebie about how to chart so your voice will be heard. Get on my mailing list so you can know when I'm going to be doing some of these videos. I talk better than I write, so I'd rather just talk to you and then write letters. Not to say I won't send you a letter here and there. But I want to finish with this quote from Florence Nightingale. And I think it came in my Sigma Theta Tau newsletter today. So listen carefully. Again, this is Flo's birthday. She had a lot to go in her life too. How very little can be done under the spirit of fear. Pause. It's kind of been a fearful year, hasn't it? You know, the COVID pandemic is a little bit different than the pandemic that I went through when I was in active practice in the emergency room. And that was in the early 80s. Some of you weren't born in the early 80s, but we had a disease running around that we didn't know what it was, but all we knew was men were starting to hemorrhage and have all sorts of pneumonias, and my hemophiliac kids were dying, and it was AIDS. Now, I started nursing practice. We didn't wear gloves in the emergency room. Yes, that is true. But we had our own fears then, just like you have fears of COVID. So we've lived, nurses have survived lots and lots of trauma. This is going to be no different. Very little can be done under the spirit of fear, says Florence. I am of certain convinced that the greatest heroes are those who do their duty in the daily grind of their affairs, while the world whirls about as a maddening dreidel. I can say the world has been a maddening dreidel this past year. But I want to wish you happy Nurses Day. Thank you for being in the profession that I love. I'll show you some of my old pictures too, with some of my dress scrubs and all those kind of things. But stay tuned. Let's communicate about this. How do we get through the mean people, the drama triangle, the stress cycle, and seeing people as people? Those are the 4 big things we're going to work on over the next couple months. And I didn't tell you who I was, but most of you know I'm Jo Neal Connolly. And happy Nurses Week. Hey there, nurse.